Have you ever stepped into a forest and felt like someone was walking behind you, even though you knew, without a doubt, you were completely alone? Some forests aren't just dark, they swallow all sound, and after night falls, you're no longer the only one awake. Across the world, there are forests where people vanish without a trace, where no device works, and where the voice calling your name doesn't come from ahead, but from behind. Today, you'll uncover 10 forests that locals warn about. Never enter after dark, not because of wild animals, but because of something else. 1. Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania. If you've ever heard the phrase the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, then you've heard of Hoia Baciu. Hidden on the outskirts of Cluj-Napoca, Romania, Hoia Baciu is unlike any forest on Earth. The trees twist in unnatural spirals, warped as if pulled by some invisible force. And inside the forest, it's not the wind you hear, it's absolute silence. The kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat. Locals have avoided the area for generations. They say those who enter after sunset often don't return the same. Some vanish completely. Others come back missing hours, or even days, of memory. The most famous case is of a young girl who disappeared in the forest in 1968 and reappeared 5 years later, not a day older, wearing the same clothes and remembering nothing. Electronics like watches, compasses, and phones malfunction inside. Watches stop ticking. Cameras capture only blurry, distorted images, as if looking through a tear in reality. Several international paranormal teams have camped in the forest. One group recorded their EMF detectors screaming every time they approached a strange clearing, a patch of land where no grass grows and no animals ever enter. But the truly terrifying part of Hoia Baciu isn't what you hear. It's what you feel watching you. Not one gaze, but dozens. From every direction. Gentle, quiet, patient. As if something doesn't want you to leave, but isn't in a hurry to keep you either. 2. Aokigahara, Japan. At the base of Japan's majestic Mount Fuji lies a forest with a deceptively simple name, Aokigahara. But don't let its daytime beauty fool you. Under the sunlight, it's like a living watercolor. Tangled roots, beams of light filtering through the trees, cool mountain air. But once the sun dips behind the mountain, everything changes. The Japanese call it Jukai, the sea of trees. But they also whisper that restless spirits live here. Aokigahara is known for its haunting silence. Sound doesn't carry. Footsteps vanish into soft moss. Birds don't sing. And if you call out, you won't hear an echo. It's as if your voice is absorbed into the trees. Hikers often bring colored tape or string to mark their paths, because GPS and compasses go haywire. But there have been cases where the string simply disappears, even just a few feet away. One photographer recalled seeing a human figure flickering between the trees. When he aimed his flashlight, the shadow didn't vanish. It stood still. He turned away, and a whisper spoke, not from far away, but right next to his left ear. Aokigahara isn't scary in the traditional sense. It warps your sense of reality. Some say the forest made them forget who they were. Others claim they saw themselves walking from the opposite direction, with blank eyes. This is why the Japanese avoid Aokigahara after dark. Not because of superstition, but because they know some places weren't meant for people to stay too long. 3. Epping Forest, England. Less than an hour's drive from London, Epping Forest is a popular spot for nature walks during the day. But once the sun sets, this 6,000-acre forest transforms into a stage for centuries of eerie legends. Since medieval times, it has been the site of secret executions, ambushes, and unexplained deaths. Ancient oaks, thick chestnut trees, and dense undergrowth create winding paths that feel like mazes. And many visitors have claimed they walk in endless circles, even as their GPS insists they're going straight. Local lore says that on certain nights, you can hear galloping hooves pounding through the forest, even though the old road was abandoned long ago. Some say they've seen a headless horseman crossing the path, only to vanish into mist. In 1997, two boys came running out of the forest in panic, claiming they saw a cloaked figure gliding between the trees without touching the ground. Epping Forest doesn't try to scare you. It reminds you of what once happened. Every path, every tree holds a piece of memory, and if you're not careful, you might become part of it. These three forests aren't just wild nature. They are archives of the unexplained. And every time someone enters the woods, learn a little more about us. But in the next part, we'll go deeper into forests where sound disappears, light bends, and modern technology becomes meaningless. Are you ready to enter places where darkness isn't just part of the woods, but the one guarding the gate? 4. Freetown-Fall, River State Forest, Massachusetts, USA. Located within the infamous Bridgewater Triangle, a region in New England known for intense paranormal activity, Freetown-Fall River State Forest isn't just a place for hiking or camping. It's considered one of the most mysterious forests in America. Since the 1970s, there have been countless reports of strange lights, unidentified creatures, and whispering voices at night. But the most disturbing thing is the unnatural silence when you go too deep into the woods. People say sound has no way out. You can speak a sentence, and instead of echoing, the sound seems to get trapped, swallowed by the trees. Some claim they can hear their heartbeat louder than their own footsteps. Campers report waking around 3 a.m. to a faint tearing sound, like ripping paper, close to their ears, only for it to go dead silent the moment they sit up. No wind, no insects, no sound at all, except for their own breathing, and something else, mimicking it. Locals also talk about sightings of a faceless shadow figure, a tall, blurry silhouette that stands in the woods and disappears when approached. Whether it's day or night, there's a common sensation here. Sound doesn't travel straight. It loops, then comes back behind you. 5. Black Forest, Germany. Germany's Black Forest, or Schwarzwald, is famous not only for its fairy tale beauty, but also for being the birthplace of Europe's darkest legends. Many Grimm brothers' tales were born here, and perhaps not by coincidence, because the Black Forest has long been called the forest that eavesdrops. Some visitors say they've heard clear whispers in the trees, only to find no one around. The strangest phenomenon reported is the delayed echo effect. When you shout, the echo doesn't return immediately. It comes a few seconds late, and never quite sounds like your voice. One group of college students recorded themselves calling out each other's names. When they played it back, they heard a third female voice saying the name of someone who wasn't there. Locals tell of figures walking backwards through the trees, dark shapes that never turn around, just fading into the forest as if they were never real. During the day, the Black Forest is as beautiful as a postcard. But when night falls, the trees don't just cast shadows. They create silences that speak. 6. Dow Hill Forest, India. Near the town of Kurseong in West Bengal lies Dow Hill Forest, a place where everyone knows one rule: never enter after 5 p.m. Why? because there are things in that forest that only come alive after sunset. Right next to the woods is Dow Hill School, a colonial-era boarding school with its own share of eerie tales, windows opening and closing on their own, footsteps echoing through empty hallways. But the forest behind it is where the real horror begins. Locals say they've seen the silhouette of a child walking without touching the ground, and when you call out to it, it turns around but has no face. Forest rangers report getting disoriented suddenly, with compasses spinning wildly and GPS devices failing, even though they hadn't moved from where they stood. Some hikers claim to hear children laughing deep in the woods at midnight, but when they try to follow the sound, it repeats, like a scratched audio loop playing over and over. Many who have camped at the forest's edge ran away in the middle of the night, terrified by an icy chill that appeared suddenly, even though the weather hadn't changed. And if you stay long enough, you'll hear yourself speaking from somewhere in the forest, though you don't know from where. 7. Isle of Pines Forest, Canada. On a remote island in Ontario lies a mysterious woodland called the Isle of Pines, a forest where no matter how far you walk, you always return to the same spot. Locals believe the forest isn't just geographically confusing, but that space itself folds inside in ways we can't understand. People who have entered with GPS, watches, and audio recorders say that after 3 hours of walking, the GPS still shows them right where they started. One photographer placed a time-lapse camera from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., but when he reviewed the footage, only the first 30 minutes were captured. The rest was total darkness, even though the battery had not died. A recurring phenomenon in the Isle of Pines is the sound of fake wind. You hear wind rustling all around, but the trees don't move. You hear footsteps on dry leaves, but no tracks appear. During every full moon, locals say the forest begins to emit a low hum, not like wind or wildlife, but like hundreds of people whispering beneath the ground. These forests don't just erase sound, they change what sound is, and sometimes distort your very sense of what's real. But in the final part, we'll enter the most terrifying places of all. Forests with minds of their own. Forests that know where you are. And forests that don't just let you in. They keep you. Are you ready to step into a place where even time isn't sure how far it's traveled? 8. Devil's Tramping Ground, North Carolina, USA. In a small town called Bear Creek, North Carolina, there's a barren clearing in the woods, a perfect circle about 40 feet across. No grass grows there, no animals step inside, and locals call it the Devil's Tramping Ground. For hundreds of years, nothing has been able to live inside that circle. People have tried planting trees. Everything dies. Stranger still, anything left inside overnight will be found moved or lying outside the circle the next morning. Campers have reported waking in the middle of the night to the sound of heavy footsteps circling their tent. Slow, steady, deliberate. When they turn on a flashlight, no one's there. But the ground is pressed in, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. Some brave souls set up night vision cameras. One recording shows a shadow gliding across the clearing, but the frame right before it shows no sign of anything approaching. Locals believe this is where an ancient force walks every night, crushing the earth beneath invisible footsteps. And the scariest part? If you fall into too deep a sleep there, you might wake up outside the circle, or never wake up as yourself again. 9. Deering Woods, England. Near the village of Pluckley in Kent, known as the most haunted village in England, lies a small forest called Deering Woods, but locals call it something else, the Screaming Woods. Every year, There are dozens of reports of untraceable screams echoing from deep within the trees, especially around 3 a.m. Sometimes it sounds like a man, other times a child, and often like a long-winded moan slicing through your chest. Local legends say this forest was the site of public executions in medieval times. Those wrongfully punished never left. Their souls relive their final moments in screams that echo each night. A group of teens once dared to camp overnight. They say their phones died all at once. Flashlights went dark, and one of them began whispering in a language none of them recognized. By morning, he remembered nothing, only that he had dreamt of being followed by himself. Daring Woods isn't a place to explore. It's where every step you take leaves behind an echo, and that echo might not be yours. 10. Old House Woods, Virginia, USA. Nestled beside Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, Old House Woods is where forest meets sand, and both hold on to something that doesn't belong to this time. Named after a centuries-old wooden house that burned down long ago, this forest is known for what locals call reality slips, moments when phantom ships drift silently through the trees, floating through the air without wind, water, or crew. Fishermen claim to have heard bells from ghost ships, and when they turned toward the forest, they saw faint yellow lights, like lanterns, drifting between the trees. One camper described it like this: "At night, the woods blur, not dark, but as if a fog pulls a second layer of reality over everything." He heard footsteps crunching through sand, but when he turned around, there were no tracks. The most unsettling phenomenon is time distortion. One visitor said he entered at dusk and walked for what felt like 30 minutes. But when he returned, the clock showed nearly 4 hours had passed, and the moon had shifted across the entire sky. Old House Woods doesn't scare you with what you see. It makes you question your sense of time, space, and self. And that kind of fear stays buried in the mind. You've just stepped through 10 forests, where the light isn't enough, but the darkness knows your name. Some forests don't return your voice. Some spin you in circles inside your own memories. And some places, with just one step too deep, you'll never be sure who you are or where you really are. These forests don't forbid you from entering, but they never promise you'll leave the same. Comment below. Which forest would you never dare enter? And what should we explore next? Ancient catacombs, abandoned clock towers, or lands where time no longer follows rules? Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't in the forest. It's that the forest is standing still, and only you are lost.